Hello and welcome to episode 28 of Little Big Knits. My name is Selma. I'm your host. This is a podcast about knitting. You can find me on Instagram and Ravelry as Selma Knits. I am coming to you from Ottawa, a very rainy Ottawa, where I live with my family, my two kids, my husband, and our cat Yoda, who once again is snuggling there on the sofa in front of me. Let's see if she makes an appearance. She was very, very rambunctious earlier and has now settled down. Actually, the carpet that's right there was a complete shambles. It was all mushed up in all kinds of different directions. So anyway, she's often like that in the morning, and then she sleeps for the rest of the day. So welcome. As I said, it is dark and rainy. It's a morning. However, the tree that's in front of our house, when it gets leaves in the summertime, it tends to darken the living room a lot, and today is also not a sunny day. So I am using, for the first time, studio lights. So if you have any feedback about that, feel free to comment below. I've never set them up before. This is my first time, so hopefully I've done it reasonably well and I'm not too pale or washed out. I did a little color test earlier and everything seems to be fairly normal, so hopefully that's all right. So welcome today. There have been some new subscribers, so welcome all new subscribers. And those of you who've been around for a while, hello again. It's always nice to have you guys. And today is a lovely, simple day for me, so I thought I would take the opportunity to podcast, because the last couple of weeks have been busy and the next couple of weeks are going to be busy, which I'll tell you a little bit about later on. In the beginning segment, you just had a bunch of spring scenes, but at the end of the podcast today, I'll be sharing some footage from the Prince Edward County Fibre Festival that I went to. So if you're interested, stay tuned for that. So today I'm drinking a lovely cup of tea in this Nicholas Moss cup that my friend Kate from the Hawthorne Cottage Craft podcast, who lives in Ireland, brought me a couple of years ago. And in it, I have a tea from a shop in Toronto called Tealish. If you're Canadian, you may have seen their teas in Chapters, Indigo, or some places like that, because they do sell to those stores now, they wholesale. However, they have a storefront on Roncesvalles in Toronto. They used to be on Queen Street West, and I've been buying teas from them for years. I have a friend who lives in Toronto, and we used to go down Queen Street West and go to the knitting shops and the different other kinds of shops, and also this tea shop that was around there. And I'm drinking a tea called Sweetie Pie today, which is a Rooibos based tea. It's got coconut, almond, rose petals, and there's a very sort of almondy flavor to it. So if you're not a fan of marzipan, you wouldn't like this because it's got a little bit of that kind of flavor to it. But I really like it, and I've bought it a few times already. So before we get into the knitting, I'll just remind you that we have the Garment Galore Cal. And this is a cal that I'm co-hosting with Kate from the Hawthorne Cottage Craft podcast. It's a year-long knit-along or crochet-along about garments. So, cardigans, sweaters, skirts, shorts, boleros, dresses, things like that. Garments are items that cover your torso, essentially, and that you would wear as clothing, not necessarily accessories such as shawls or socks. So those aren't accepted. And it's for adults. And it started on January 1st. It goes until December 31st. We have chatter threads, we have finished object threads, and we also have a summer fibers finished object thread. So if you make something out of linen, for example, or nettle or cotton, the rules are in there so you can check it out. And we also have a men's finished object thread, which is hosted in my group on Ravelry, the Little Big Knits group. And Kate in her Hawthorne Cottage Craft group is also hosting a yoked finished object sweater. So you can, if you've made a yoked men's sweater out of linen, you could put that in all of the threads if you wanted to enter for prizes. So that's going really strong. There have been so many wonderful, wonderful items that have been put in, sweaters, lots of inspiration for us all, and there's been some great chatter in the thread. So thank you to everybody who's participating. If you feel like participating, come along. If you've never knitted a sweater before, don't be shy, go for it. And we're there as well for, just for sharing, or if you have any questions or whatever, myself or somebody else will surely answer. So it's been great fun. I love going in there every day and seeing what people have been posting in terms of chatter or in terms of finished objects. If you happen to be a maker, a dyer, a designer, and you feel like you would like to donate something as a prize for the Garment Galore Cal or anything else for the podcast, feel free to get in touch with me, and I'd be happy to receive anything for the Cal in particular. We'll be having prizes at the end of the year for all the different threads that we have. So there you go. So today I haven't actually finished anything. I have some works in progress that I'll share with you. The only finished thing that I have is really what I'm wearing, which is a cardigan. I just checked. I made it in 2013. That's practically, actually, I think it was in May of 2013. So that was 6 years ago, which really tells you that time flies, because I thought it was 3 or 4 years ago that I made this. So this is the Summer Solstice by Heidi Kiermaier, which is a cardigan. I'll just stand up briefly so you can see that it is a longer cardigan. It comes down to here. It's made out of linen. It's got some interesting details. So the top is made horizontally, and then the body is knit vertically, and afterwards this stockinette band is knit on. I made it out of Lang Lino, which is a worsted weight chainette linen yarn, which is really, really lovely, I have to say. I don't know if it's discontinued, or I think it's still being made, and I think I've seen it on some online shops. Highly recommend it. This was made 6 years ago, and I wear it every season, and it's in excellent shape. So I highly recommend this yarn, and it was actually on sale at a local yarn shop, and I regret not buying more of it because it's really very nice. In terms of linen yarns, sometimes people are hesitant to knit with yarns such as cotton or linen in particular, because they can be very string-like or rope-like, and some people tend to find them hard to knit with. They find them hard on their hands. That's not been my experience, I have to say. I don't know if there's something about style of knitting that has an impact on the way it feels on the hands, or how tight a knitter you are. I have no idea. But certain people do complain about it. If you're wanting to try linen, again, let's say you've tried it and you've had a bad experience, I would say go for a chainette. The Lang Lino is a chainette. I think Knit Picks has Lindy Chain, which is a chainette. I think Shibui came out with one this year or last year. Is it called Reed? I can't remember exactly which one it's called, which one it is, but it's a chainette linen that I'm really dying to try, actually. They tend to have a little bit of elasticity to them because they're already a knit fabric, and so they are a little bit more forgiving and easier to knit with, I would say. I think Quince Company Castrell is also that kind of a yarn as well, when it's an Aran weight one, and one that's on my wish list, as well as the Shibui Reed, I think it's called. So if you're hesitant to try linen or to knit with linen again, give a chainette a try. You might be pleasantly surprised. So yeah, this was a lovely pattern. As you can see, it sits very nicely for an open style cardigan. I really very much like it and would make it again, to be honest. You never know, that might happen. I tend to go from one pattern to the next. I don't often repeat patterns, but it has been a really nice fitting and long lasting cardigan, so I've really enjoyed it. So for the rest of today, I'm just going to share not many works in progress with you and a little bit about what's coming up next. And then I thought I would share about the Prince Edward County Fibre Festival, talk a little bit about some of the books that I've read recently, and maybe talk a little bit about food. I've been thinking about starting a food thread in our group on Ravelry. So if you have an opinion about that, feel free to share if that's something that would be interesting to you. I love food, and not that I experiment with cooking all the time, because I do have a family to feed and I do work 9 to 5, so there's not always a whole lot of time for that. But I've been in a food kick again lately, and I would love to share some of the stuff that I've been trying out. Obviously there are copyright issues, so not necessarily recipes from books, but at least which books they came from, or links to recipes, or you know, sharing something that I've written down myself or whatever. So anyway, tell me what you think about that. All right, so on to knitting. What have I been working on? So one thing to say, everything I showed you last time, I'm not going to be showing you today. The Evening Dew cardigan is at work and I forgot it there, and I haven't had a whole lot of time to knit on it at lunchtime, so it's not here to show you. I've probably knit maybe an inch in the last month. I don't think even that really. So there wouldn't have been a whole lot to show you, but it's being worked on little by little, and I'll get back to it in more full force, I would say, in the early fall to get it ready for the winter. I was also doing some swatching last time, and none of those things have gone forward. I showed you a swatch with multiple colors of linen that I was trying out, and thank you so much for all your feedback about that. But that just has sat in a corner with me wondering what I want to do with that. I actually have ordered a skein of a fingering weight linen from Yarn Stories. You can find them on Etsy, and they have an amazing range of colors and I think a couple of weights of linen yarn. They have a lace weight and a fingering weight, I believe, in all these different colors that come from Lithuania. So I've ordered a skein of a color that I hope is sort of a natural white that would be between the cream color and the stark white that I had for the swatch. And then I thought I'll see what happens with that, and hopefully that will be the inspiration that'll turn it into what I have in my mind. And then I was also sharing with you that I was swatching for some other things, and those things didn't pan out. So I'm going to share with you what ended up happening after the podcast, when I suddenly I sort of shared my frustration that I was sort of swatching and I thought I didn't have enough yarn and all that stuff. So then I cast on something completely different, which is down here. I also haven't worked on my crochet blanket at all. Marta, if you're watching, you need to whip me into action for that crochet blanket, because I just haven't had a whole lot of mojo. I think I've done a half a square in the last month, so nothing worth showing either. But in this bag by the Lakeside, Sandy of By the Lakeside, and with this great new pin, check that out. Sweater on board, so everybody knows what's in here. It's a new sweater. This is an enamel pin that was created by Mars of Hey Brown Berry. You can get them. I don't know if she has any in stock right now, but she's got two kinds of pins. I got myself the sweater on board, and just so you know, I bought one for the garment Galore Cal. And there's also a socks on board. So if you're knitting socks, you can get one of her pins, and I just thought I really like them a lot. And she was making these and raising money for her nieces and nephews for their various endeavors. So it was a wonderful cause. And so if you're in the mood for an enamel pin, I have to say I'm a bit of a sucker for enamel pins. So when I see one, it's hard for me not to say no. And I have to say Mars has amazing shipping. That's one thing that will often stop me from buying an enamel pin. When the shipping price is the same price as the enamel pin, I just feel like I'm paying double for a pin. So that stops me sometimes. But I really love her pins. I have another one upstairs, which was, I can't remember right now. It's just like, whoop, blank out of my head, but I'll show it to you the next time I'm using that bag. And then I got this one. She's just got very clever, simple, lovely designs. So way to go, Mars. So what did I cast on? I showed you guys the yarn that my friend Sue had gotten me from Greece. This is what's left of it. There is just enough for 2 sleeves, or two elbow length sleeves. This was a yarn she brought from Greece. She went on a cruise through the Mediterranean and went to Greece. And this is from Butterfly Yarns. If you happen to be able to read Greek, there you go. I don't know what that says, but this is their number 16, I believe, which is a fingering weight. And talking of chainettes, I don't know, can you see that that is actually a chainette yarn? So after the last podcast, I was really struggling with what am I going to make next? I want to make something for the summer. I'm ready for that. And I was struggling with my swatches, realizing that I may not have enough yarn. And so then I remembered, and I think I may have mentioned it to you last time, that I had some leftover Holst yarn in their Coast, which is a 45 cotton 55 wool blend in their Harbor colorway. I made a tunic last summer called Uyo from the Line magazine. I can't remember which one though. I made a blue tunic. You may remember if you've been around for a while. And I thought, oh, I wonder what would happen if I swatched these two together. They're very similar in color. This is a bit brighter. This is a bit more denim-like and a bit more muted. And I thought, what would happen? Surely they'll look good together. They did. And then I decided to make the Unkers sweater by Petite Knit. Now, this is almost done. I mean, there was probably about, this was a 200 gram skein. It's cotton, so it's a little heavy, but there are probably a good 800, maybe a tiny bit more yards of yarn on here, but I didn't know because the label did not say. So I thought I will make the Unkers and I'll make it a slightly shorter version and with short sleeves, like a little top. So I think it's actually meant to go this way. Here it is so far. Now I know some of you are going to say, oh Selma, I can't believe you've almost finished a sweater in the month. But this should have been quite fast. It's a short sleeved kind of cropped top, but there have been some funny little things along the way which I'll tell you about. But this is a yoke construction that finishes with a raglan shaping for the arms. And there are many projects of this, and I have to say a rather large proportion of them look really good. And I've always liked this sweater, so I decided to make this. And the two yarns create just a really nice blue. And although it's quite closed looking, once you're actually wearing it, the neck opens up a little bit, and it's just got a really nice fit here for a yoked sweater. So this sweater, if you were in the garment Galore Cal, by the way, you could easily put into the yoked sweater thread in Kate's group, and you could put it in the summer fibers threads in our groups, as well as the general thread. So this is one of those sweaters that fits, except for the men's category, it fits in all the other categories. So a couple of things. I had some issues with this sweater. Not with actually making the yoke, that went super easy, fairly easy. I do have some comments about the pattern, which I'll get to in a moment. But when I finished the raglan shaping the first time around, I was using a 3.75 millimeter needle, and I realized it's going to be tight. I don't like it. I didn't want a tight sweater. So I ripped back to here, and I decided to put on another row of increases to give it a little bit more ease, because although I was making the second largest size, and there's not a whole lot of difference between the largest and the second largest size in terms of stitch count, I just felt like it's not what I'm looking for, so I'll just put a bunch of stitches on and see what happens. And then I ended up using the same regular number of stitches for the sleeves, but having some more stitches for the torso, because I kind of preferred having tighter sleeves but a looser torso. So then I knit down to the separation of the body and the sleeves again, and then I realized I don't like the fabric. It's too tight. And at around that time, I ended up accidentally leaning on my 3.75 millimeter Knit Pro needles that I love so much. I really, really, really like these needles. And so that was out of commission. And then I decided, why don't I rip back to the yoke one more time and continue in 4 millimeter needles, with 4 millimeter needles, without reknitting the yoke. I didn't think it was going to make a big enough difference, but I thought it might make the fabric just a little bit more loose, and it actually was just perfect. So I ended up knitting the yoke with 3.75 millimeter needles, but the rest of the sweater with 4.0 millimeter needles. Blah, 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 blah. And so I think the third time was the charm. Then I got down there and it was like, okay, this looks like it's working. And I've ordered a 3.75 millimeter needle for the Knit Pros. And in the meantime, I'm finishing the sweater with 4 millimeter needles. These are, I think, what was this package called? It was a set of interchangeables that I shared with you maybe in the early fall or something. These are wonderful. I ended up, when I broke the 3.75 millimeter needle from this one, I changed to the Lücke needles, and I realized that these ones just, even though the Lücke needles are quite slick, these ones, considering that they're wooden needles, are actually even more slick than the Lücke needles. They don't have quite as smooth a join here, I have to say, but I still really enjoy the slickness of the wooden needle. So I highly recommend those as a wooden needle. So I have now knit the body. I knit the body and then I had to re-knit the ribbing because it was a little too short, so I knit a little bit more length, and now I've done that, and I've done a split hem here with a slightly longer in the back. And I'm just about to, I'm gonna have to rip back the sleeve a little bit because I want to do quite a long rib, but the sleeve is kind of short, almost to the elbow type of thing, and I'm gonna run out of yarn, so it'll be just perfect. I'll probably have like 3 or 4 grams of yarn left. So regarding this pattern, it's not terrible, but it's not fabulous in terms of the explanations, in terms of the level of detail. There's not a huge range of sizes. I think there are 4 or 5, but as I said, I made the second largest size, and there was very little difference between the second largest size and the largest size. I could have just gone and made the largest size. So that was one thing, not a huge range, but considering that I'm about a 40 bust, and I needed to add on some extra stitches, I don't know, maybe my gauge changed, but I felt not the clarity, the writing was generally clear, but the level of detail in the pattern is minimal. So the instructions are a little vague. So if you are a brand spanking new sweater knitter, I wouldn't start with this one. And I know that Petite Knits patterns are very popular, and I suspect that her raglan sleeve ones are probably easier, or they don't need as much detail, and so perhaps they'd be easier ones to start with. Like her No Frills is a huge hit. Everybody makes it. Many people have made these. I don't know if other people have complained about the same thing. I was able to do it, but I did feel like, and I have made enough sweaters that I feel like I can, I can modify things fairly easily. But if somebody weren't in that situation, I think this sweater could be a little bit frustrating, or if you are looking for a little bit more generosity in the sizing, you're not going to find it here. So it was a very simple concept, and I like it a lot, and this fits well. The other thing about this is that the increases are the same no matter what the size, which shocked me a little bit, and I wondered how it was going to work, and it actually worked really well. So, she's got something there that's interesting, because the sweater tends to look good on a lot of people. Yeah, so the number of increases that you do around is the same, but then there might be a different, you might do more sets of increases depending on the size. So anyway, I don't want to give away too much from the pattern, but today indie pattern writers are putting an incredible amount of detail into patterns. They're so well thought out, so well written out, with tutorials and all kinds of stuff. And so I feel like, somebody who's writing a pattern like that and then something like this where there's minimal detail, there's kind of a stark difference there. And so I found it a little jarring, to be honest. But I'm very happy to still have made this sweater. I think I'm going to really enjoy it. And I could see myself exploring this shape a little bit and maybe making a winter version. It could be quite nice, a little winter version in burgundy or something like that. So there you go. Hope what I said was clear. On to the next work in progress. So the next cast on was something you didn't see last time. As you know, I'm not a huge sock knitter these days. There was a time where I did knit a lot of socks, but in the last couple of years, I've knit a pair of socks here and there, and sometimes more as presents for others, because I do have a healthy number of socks, and I wear them all winter long. But my basket's a little full, so I didn't really think that I needed more socks. There are some patterns that I'm really dying to try, and so hopefully now I'll have the mojo for them. Because I happened to be on Instagram one day, and Tracy Miller of the Grocery Girls posted a picture of some new shorty socks that she's designing. And in fact, I think she had posted them or showed them on their last episode. And I just happened to say, those are really cute. If you need a tester, I'd be happy to. And she said, sure. And I was like, oh, I guess I'm making a pair of shorty socks. And actually, if I was going to make a pair of socks, that was the kind of sock that I thought I could use some shorty socks. I don't have any, and I thought it'd be neat to see how I could incorporate them. Are they something that would be that I would wear on a regular basis? So I jumped on board. So in this bag by Paradise Island, Patricia of Paradise Island, which is so adorable, and I just love this metallic ink that she used. Patricia makes amazing bags. If you don't know her work, you really should check it out. She does the silkscreen printing. She uses wonderful fabrics and really great colors, and they're just really well-made bags. So in here is the Georgia socks by Tracy Miller. They've now been published, so if you want to check them out, they're on Ravelry, and it's a shorty sock. So I used some yarn that I happen to have in my stash. There is this Lang Super Socks Cashmere Color 4-ply that my friend Dana had sent me last year, I think. And then I had this other yarn in my stash that had been there for a really long time, which is a Lana Grossa Mylan White. And I don't actually know the color, but it's this sort of gray, taupey gray color with subtle stripes. And then this one also has subtle stripes. So I ended up, I haven't sewn in the ends yet. I didn't bring blockers with me. I'm just not used to showing socks off these days. But these are the little shorties. So there's this wonderful lace detail, and there is a cut-in heel, and yeah, they were just great to make. I'm on to the second one. I finished the first one so that I could give her feedback, and I'm in the process of making the second one. And there are ends because of the stripes, so you could use a self-striping yarn instead if you wanted, but this was really, really fun to make, I have to say. First, a couple of things. If you've been around, you know that I generally knit socks toe up. And that is primarily because I've managed to get them to fit me well, but also because I can't stand Kitchener stitch. So after I took this on, I realized I'm gonna do Kitchener stitch like 4 times, OMG. So that's okay, because you know what? I really struggled with the first one, but by the time I got to the heel, it was just a lot better. So There is the toe. It's not terrible. And then there's the heel. I don't know, the heel was I got into it, and now I'm looking forward to doing the other two on the other sock, and maybe this will be the end of my poor relationship with Kitchener Stitch. Maybe I'll start liking it. The other thing about this sock, which was very cool, and at first I thought, no, I can't do that, is a cut-in heel. So you've heard of an afterthought heel where you knit in one separate color and then you use that to unravel. You knit in one row of a separate color, and then at the end you take that out and you stick the live needles on, or the live stitches on needles. Here you don't even bother doing that. You just keep on knitting. You just keep on knitting, kitten, and then you actually put in the needles into the stitches, and she demonstrates it extremely well in her pattern, and you cut. And then once you've cut, you've actually already got the needles on stitch, or the stitches on needles. That's not a terribly well explained process, sorry. But anyway, all that to say, I was a little intimidated by that, but I thought, okay, I'm testing this pattern. I'm going to do what she says. And it was really clearly laid out, and it turned out really well. And one thing I really like about the cut-in heel as opposed to the afterthought heel is that you automatically have no gap. You will have no gap because of the way it's done. And I really like that, because whenever I have done an afterthought heel, I always struggle to not have a gap. Even though I've read Susan B. Anderson's pattern on how to not have a gap, I just can't seem to figure it out myself. So this is a really lovely thought for that afterthought idea. And so this pattern is super fun. It doesn't use up a whole lot of yarn. As you could see, I still have a lot left of these two, so I could probably make an entire pair of longer socks from each of them. Maybe not this one. I probably could. Or perhaps using different colors for the heels and the toes. But this was super fun, really well laid out. Talk about an indie pattern being well written and really explaining things well. And the advantage of that is that people with any level of experience can then benefit from these patterns. So if you're in the mood for knitting some fun socks, Tracy socks are really great. And as I said, they've been released. They were released sometime this week. And I'm knitting these on Chow Goose. I like working on the Chow Goose with the red cables on 2.25 millimeter needles. And she also offers 3 sizes. So that's really great. You can make them, for different sized people in the family or in your life. So that's kind of it, what I've been working on, to be honest. Now, a little story. Last time I told you that I didn't have enough of this gray yarn. Which is a linen cotton blend by Katya. And I wanted to make the Farallon cardigan by Elizabeth Doherty, Blue Bee Studios. So after the podcast, when I was looking for the Holstgarn yarn, because I gotta tell you, my stash is not the most organized. It's semi-organized, and I'm not gonna show it to you because it's embarrassing. But I was really perplexed because I told you guys last time that I didn't have enough of this yarn. And I was like, did I buy yarn to make a skirt? I was surprised because I'm pretty good at buying sufficient yarn for sweaters. And I bought this a good 2 years ago. So I thought, okay, what was I thinking? I just assumed I'd bought a sweater quantity, but had I bought enough just to make a skirt? Because I was contemplating making a skirt with this at one point. Then when I went into my semi-organized yarn closet to look for the Holstgarn, which I couldn't figure out where I had put, I ended up going deep into my different Rubbermaid tubs looking for the Holstgarn, and lo and behold, I found 4 more balls of this stuff. So I did have enough. I'm not going crazy because I really thought like, okay, I'm usually pretty organized in my head as to, you know, what I've got and so forth. So I thought, I'm like, what is wrong with me? And then I found this, and I also found the Holst garn. So I was able to start the anchors, but the Farallon is definitely going to be my next cast on. I'm really looking forward to it. This cardigan has been such a lovely thing to have on a day like today when it's summer, but it's slightly cool. And so I'm really looking forward to having another summer cardigan that I could probably wear into early fall and also wear in earlier in the spring. So that will be my next cast on. So hopefully you'll see that in some form of progress next time. So on to the other stuff that I'll talk about that I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast. If you're here purely for the knitting content, thanks for hanging out with me for a little bit, and we'll see you next time. If you want to hear about the Prince Edward County Fibre Festival, that's what I'm going to talk about next. So this was I think it was the second year. Was it the second year or the third year? So it's a fairly new yarn festival that happens in Picton, Ontario. The Prince Edward County area, which is where Picton is, it's about a 3-hour drive towards Toronto, about more or less a little south from here. So Toronto's about a 5-hour drive, and Prince Edward County is kind of between Ottawa and Toronto. And it's a beautiful, beautiful area on Lake Ontario. The Sandbanks Park is there, so there's gorgeous beaches on Lake Ontario. It's also wine country, a fairly new wine region for Ontario, but it's full of vineyards. And there are also other things there. I feel like there's a large community of makers and artists, and so there's a lot happening there. It's just a beautiful area, very popular area. So in the summer it's not always easy to find a place to stay. And this is where the Fibre Festival was in May, so not quite high season yet. And as I mentioned last time, I was going to be going with my friend Joyce, and so I got us an Airbnb. We went down Friday night. We had a lovely dinner in Picton, and then Saturday we went to the Fibre Festival. Now Joyce is not a knitter. I mean, she knits, but she's not necessarily, doesn't do it very often. And but she really enjoyed the Picton Fibre Festival, the Prince Edward County Fibre Festival, as did I. It was really, really lovely, I have to say. It was in an arena type of hall, not very big, but just really lovely, and it was nice to see a lot of familiar faces. Those of you who came up to say hello, hello, and thank you so much for saying hi. But it was also nice for me to recognize vendors, makers, sellers who I've met before, who I've seen before. So it was just a really nice occasion to say hello. Now, I'm going to be honest. I was having one of those moments where I felt like I had spent a lot of money on yarn recently and that I really needed to be careful. So I walked away without buying any yarn. Part of me feels really good about that, and part of me felt a little bad about that, because it would have been nice to support some of the people who are selling there. But there's always next year, and there's always online. But I did walk away feeling like, oh, it would have been nice to support some of the vendors, and at the same time I really felt like I just can't be buying yarn today. So I didn't buy yarn. The only thing I actually bought at the festival were these cards by a woman named Jane McMillan, who does not only knitting related stuff, but she has beautiful, beautiful drawings. Here's one of alpacas. And she makes prints as well as cards. So here's one of a sheep. And 2 years ago when I went to the Twist Fibre Festival, which is in August, I bought this print from her that came framed. And I just really like her work. So the only thing I bought at the festival was a few cards of hers that I'll be using to send to people at some point. I do have quite a few knitting related cards that I use here and there. But there were wonderful stands. There was Roots and Rains, who's a local natural dyer from here. There was Dover Farms, who has really beautiful yarn, and you'll see some of her stuff at the end. She has Wensleydale and Gotland sheep. She used to have some Finn sheep, and then she has the yarn spun, and just beautiful, beautiful natural colors. Dale of Farm to Cables was there with her beautiful stall, and boy, that was a struggle. I have to say, she has a really wonderful selection of yarn, and has a lovely online shop. So I do go and check her online shop every once in a while, and she has a great selection. So that was another one of the stands, and oh my gosh, right now it's just all a frenzy in my mind. But Rosehaven from Picton was also there, the Rosehaven shop, and so it was just really nice to say hello to all of these people. And I ended up spending a lot of time there, and even my non-knitting friend really enjoyed it, because there was other things there. There were people who were doing needle felting and weaving, and there was a lot to see, and it was really nicely spread out in the sense that the lanes or the corridors around were really quite wide, and you know, it wasn't a show with a crazy amount of people there. So there was space. There was a nice number of people there, but there was still space. There were some vendors outside as well, and even one of the wineries was there selling vinegar, actually. And there was a local brewer there, and there were some vegetables and honey people and from the area. So, and some animals. Unfortunately, it was really raining, so we didn't end up seeing the animals. Completely missed those. But I'll definitely be going back next year. I would call that a really nice local 3 hours away kind of festival. And the area is just so beautiful that it would be wonderful to go for the whole weekend, and then, you know, go to some wineries. After the festival, we did do a little bit of shopping around, just looking around, and we went for a lovely lunch on the lake, and or sort of early dinner, I should say, before coming back. So that was that weekend, and it was really, really lovely. It's a beautiful area. I can't say enough about it. I would move there quite easily, actually. And then back to the food thing in a moment, for just a moment. I will put a thread in our group about food, and I'm going to start posting some things around food. If you want to post things around food in there, go ahead. And it would be a great place to chat and talk a little bit about food. Perhaps we can start with spring, summer recipes, with seasonal things. And I just often feel when I'm making something that, oh, wouldn't it be nice to share this with the people from Little Big Knits group? And so I'm just going to start doing it. I recently made a rhubarb syrup to make sodas with, and usually it would be a strawberry rhubarb syrup, but I was just too lazy to go out and get strawberries, so I thought I'll just make it a rhubarb vanilla syrup, and the kids devoured it, so it's gone. But it was really, really nice, and so I'll share where the original recipe comes from in the group. And then on to what I have read recently. I think I may have mentioned that I was reading a book called Forgiveness by Mark Sakamoto. And Mark Sakamoto is of Canadian-Japanese descent. And the book Forgiveness was on the Canada Reads. It was actually the Canada Reads winner from 2018. Canada Reads is a CBC, which is the Canada Broadcasting Corporation. It's our national radio station. They do sort of a reading competition every year with I think usually 5 contenders, and the books are defended by different people. And in 2018, this book won. And so when I saw that there was an audio version, I thought, oh, well, let's listen to it. So I did. And I have to say, on many levels, it was a really great book to listen to. I think very important in a Canadian context, and Canadian history from Second World War and the Japanese and Canadian relationship. So there was some unfortunate things that happened in Canada with the Japanese population at the time, and they ended up being put into internment camps which is a rather sore spot on our history. And so at the same time, this story was talking about that because that's part of Mark Sakamoto's heritage, but it also talked about his Canadian heritage and his grandfather who fought in Asia during the Second World War as well. So you've got sort of that juxtaposition, as well as his own growing up. He's a younger man, and sort of the issues that happen in his family. And it was a lovely, lovely memoir. I really quite enjoyed it. And the story, I think, was really, especially the first part around Second World War, I thought was really illuminating. I thought it was really well told, and I thought it was really nice how he sort of brought it back. Mark Sakamoto ended up working in Canadian politics a little bit at one point, and so he sort of looped it back, which was really, really nicely done. I have to be honest, there was one thing that I didn't love about the book, and that was the writing. It's rare to notice that I don't like the writing very much, but that's just my own personal feeling about it. But I still really enjoyed the book, and I enjoyed the story, and I felt like I was learning something at the same time about Canada and what happened during the Second World War. Since then, I've started Trevor Noah's Born a Crime, which is another memoir from his childhood, of his life in South Africa. Trevor Noah is he's a comedian as well as a late night TV host for the Daily Show, I believe. I don't watch television, so I don't know, but I have seen him speak here and there, and I just always love listening to him. So I thought, let's listen to this book, and I've just really enjoyed it. What a great storyteller. Now, I'm listening to it on audio, and he's the one reading it, which is the only way it could have been done, because one of the amazing things about Trevor Noah is that he speaks multiple languages and grew up in a context where there were multiple languages. So those languages are sort of used throughout the storytelling. And it's so good. It's so well told. The stories are so well told and funny, but poignant at the same time, that actually I'm listening to that book a little bit more slowly with my family. So I thought, it's a great, very accessible book. There is some swearing in it, but the stories are all just really good stories. And so Alejandro and I have been listening to it, and Isla wants to pipe in sometimes, and I've gotten Yana to listen to a few stories, and really, really enjoying that. And I'm 30 minutes away from finishing another book called Something in the Water by Catherine Steadman. This is a thriller. I know that Treliz Coloris is who's a yarn dyer. She's actually having a knit-along, book-along, and that's her book for the month of May or June. And I said, hey, I'm reading that too, or listening to it. And that's been a really good thriller. It's been really fun to listen to it. And I'm now just in the last pages. The peak is gone, and now I'm just in the last little bit of it, and I'll be finishing that today at some point. So that is what I've been listening to as well. And over the next couple of weeks, some interesting stuff, fun stuff is happening. Next weekend, I will be going to Toronto to visit, actually, Patricia of Paradise Island, of these bags, as well as probably seeing some other people, and my other knitting people, and my friend Dana as well, who I'll be staying with. And then when I get back from Toronto, the day after that, and a few days before my birthday, Kate of Hawthorne Cottage Craft Podcast is coming to Canada. So excited to see Kate again and spend a week with her. Her husband and her son are also coming. So it's just going to be so fun to meet them. So the next couple of weeks are going to be extremely exciting and fun. I'm very, very happy about that. And what a great way to celebrate my birthday this year. So I'm very grateful to have these lovely, lovely people around. It's going to be great. And that's really it for today, friends. I hope that you're enjoying your day. I hope you've had a good time hanging out with me for the last little bit, enjoying perhaps a lovely beverage, some knitting, or just lounging, or crafting of some sort. I hope this podcast has found you well, and I hope the month of June has been good to you. I suspect the next time you'll see me will be in July, because it is going to be busy for the next couple of weeks. But I hope that I'll be able to see you at some point in July. Actually, at the very beginning of July, Alejandro and I will be going away for a couple of days to the Prince Edward County region as well. So there'll probably be some footage from that and from the different social engagements over the next couple of weeks as well. So I'll see you hopefully in 3-4 weeks and tell you a little bit more about my knitting, probably be wearing the unkers, and hopefully nothing else goes wrong with it. And we'll see you then. Take good care, people. Bye.
All the stars have come in close just to see you, I suppose, and they're a-gleaming. You must be dreaming. And the sun has said goodbye with a twinkle in his eye. He's left the ocean with sweet emotion. We go dancing in the rain, riding on a midnight train, away so slowly. And the moon is looking down on the sleepy side of town, and he's so lonely. I love you only. I love you only. All the birds have taken flight. It's their favorite time of night, when they can hear you from somewhere near you. And the palm trees try to bend to be closer to their friends. They're made of magic. Reach out and grab it. We go dancing in the